All right, we're going to be joined by Senator Chuck Grassley a little bit. He's going to be weighing in on the record-breaking inflation, 9.1. The report released earlier this morning, 9.1% increase over last year. But first, the University of California, Berkeley has been known over the decades as the university system's most radically progressive, or I would say regressive, campus, espousing dangerous ideologies that generations of college students will carry forth. But Berkeley School of Law professor Kiara Bridges stands apart with her Senate testimony yesterday. Listen to this exchange between her and Senator Josh Hawley.
I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing them.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
because of my line of questioning? So we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist.
I'm denying that trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think men can get pregnant.
So you are denying that trans people exist?
And that.
Oh, wow. I still can't believe that that actually happened. Well, joining me to set the record straight on this is Dr. Laura Haynes, a licensed psychologist. Dr. Haynes, welcome to Washington Watch.
Good to be with you, Tony.
All right. I mean, this is just, it's kind of crazy. We're even having these conversations, but, you know, can a biological man get pregnant?
Well, I can't conceive of a way that a biological man can conceive a baby.
So this was a part of her launching into this idea that because the senator recognizes biology and that a man cannot get pregnant, he's somehow acting violently toward transgender people, which causes them to commit suicide. So You're a licensed psychologist. You've done years of training in your profession. Is stating a mere biological reality that a man cannot become pregnant an actual act of violence?
Well, Tony, there's a view out there that you have to affirm people who have gender incongruent identity, and you have to give them gender affirming treatments, or they will be suicidal. But it just doesn't stand up to research. The best long-term research we have, in fact, comes out of the Netherlands, a study of 45 years, nearly half a century, of all adolescents and adults who went through the largest gender university facility in the country. And this is one of the countries with the oldest history and experience with this. So over nearly half a century of increasing societal affirmation and gender affirming treatments, the suicide rates of gender incongruent people continue to be several times higher than that of the population, with little to no change. And in Sweden, people who had these gender treatments, hormones and surgeries, had 19 times higher rate of suicides than their peers from the population. And then another study in Sweden more recently found that those who had these treatments and those who didn't have these treatments, there was no difference in their psychiatric need for psychiatric services for psychological problems or in hospitalizations following suicide attempts.
So those are some really good points, Dr. Haynes, that we have these studies that give us some idea of what these types of treatments do or don't do. But is not one of the challenges we have right now is that we're not allowed to study these things. We have the left that is saying, oh, we can't do the research. We just have to accept what they're putting forth as the truth.
Well, actually, research is being done. It's just not being talked about. In fact, a very important point here is research coming out of the United States and Finland and some other places showing that actually these suicidality rates precede the onset of gender dysphoria in most adolescents. So we have a study in the United States from an HMO that had 8.8 million members. The study went over 6 years, 6 to 8 years. It looked at all adolescents and children who had gender incongruence. And it looked at their electronic medical records kept in real time. And they found that they had higher rates of psychiatric disorders, neurodevelopmental disabilities, suicidality, and self-injuring behavior before first medical record evidence of gender incongruence. In fact, a third of children had these conditions before gender incongruent evidence, and 71% of adolescent boys and 75% of adolescent girls. And similarly, in Finland, in one of their two gender facilities at a university, they found that looked at all the adolescents over 2 years who went through their university gender facility, and they found that 75% had psychiatric disorders. They were severe and seldom were secondary to their gender dysphoria. So suicidality that pre-exists gender dysphoria just can't be caused by failure to affirm them or give them puberty blockers or hormones or medical treatments. And not looking at this is dangerous and harmful to them.
Well, I would think that this only compounds the problem when we now have many states that are putting forth these counseling bans, so that when a child comes out, a young person comes out and says, I'm transgender, I'm gender fluid, whatever, that they cannot get counseling. So what you're saying is there's underlying issues here that preceded the transgender, the gender dysphoria, that is much deeper, and now they can't touch it in many of these states.
It's being neglected. It's neglect and medical neglect. And it's based on a confusion that gender dysphoria is a biological inborn trait. Well, we know it isn't. The American Psychiatric Association says in its Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that it is not an intersex condition of the brain. And there's a global consensus statement by endocrine societies around the world that says that there is no consistent evidence that the brains of gender incongruent people are different from the brains of gender congruent people. In fact, it says there is no biological marker for gender incongruence. There's no way someone can find something biological in a person that is biological incongruence, incongruent identity. They can't look at their brains. They can't give them a medical test. There's nothing biological they can find.
Wow, this is alarming that we're really playing with the life and well-being of an entire generation by playing politics with this. Dr. Haynes, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank you for speaking out so clearly on this in a field of science, quite frankly, that's becoming very, very timid. And we're grateful for those voices of clarity.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Tony.
All right.